This is episode 64 of the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Jason.
My name's Andrea.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Rich.
Andrea, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, cool. Yeah, listeners, Andrea is a big gamer from Indie Plus, and she also writes a gaming blog called Ivory Thorns. And she's here today to talk with us about some of the games she's been playing. But we're going to start with Rich. Rich, I wanted to get a follow-up on Uncharted Worlds. How's that going?
It's going pretty well. Uncharted Worlds, this is our second full session, and the MC or GM, who's Larry from the Tabletop Superhighway, before the game began, he'd sent me an email, which is kind of cool because he doesn't do that roses and thorns thing that I often do in a lot of the games that I run or play in. He just sent a mid-session email. Hey, I've observed this about your character. You've got these aspects going on, not fate aspects. It's a PBTA game, but you've got these things going on with your character. How do you see it coming into play? Just looking for general ideas of where I wanted to take the character and where I saw some of the challenges for him. I thought that was a really interesting perspective, and because I had a chance to sit and think about it, you know, I sent him about a few sentences answer back for each of the questions. And then after we played, I sent him an email back. And so that was our communication style. And I like it because it was asynchronous and it didn't take up, necessarily game time because we play on a weeknight. So that was pretty cool.
Okay.
As far as the actual game, one of the things that I wanted to highlight that we ran into that I didn't know existed until we stumbled into it is a move called Cramped Quarters. Now this is cool because you have HX, you have strings, a lot of the PBTA games have those relationship mechanics, but this one was cool because it reads like when you've been in trapped quarters or cramped quarters with the same people for a significant amount of time, then you choose one of the characters and you roll just a straight flat 2d6. And the result is that you may have some questions asked back and forth, or you may talk about building a stronger bond with that character. I liked it because we've got an entire crew with a bunch of NPCs that are just slowly coming to the fore. It's mostly PC based. It's a couple hours, so we try to kind of stay in scenes with each other. But it gave us an opportunity to pass time in an interesting way and bring out a few cool questions. So I thought it was a pretty neat little move.
I dig those downtime moves more and more. It seems like a lot of the newer Powered by the Apocalypse games have something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like the move you do, like to sort of let off steam or to kind of back away from the tense situation that your characters were just in. I think I first saw it used really effectively in Night Witches, if I'm not mistaken, because I really enjoyed it in that game. It seems like it's something that's popping up a lot, and it's really great. Like Drew Medeiros has something like that in The Watch, and actually in a couple of his games. Well, I should say Drew and Anna Kreider as well on The Watch. And yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's a nice, like the other side of the coin of the action, right? It's like, okay, we do all the action, but now we have this moment to get to know each other and to let off steam and stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, it seems like an evolution, right? You start off with your relationships from the core from Apocalypse World is sex moves and history moves, interfering with people and helping people. And now, what's something that happens in Uncharted Worlds? Well, you're going to be traveling for a long time, right? So what's a move for that to abstract it? Almost like a love letter type thing, but we're going to custom move that build in. I think that's really sharp.
Yeah, agreed. Hey, so you said that communication that Larry was doing with you about your character, that wasn't really a love letter, right? It was just more of like a...
Right. Not at all a love letter. He does not like me at all. There were no moves associated, no mechanics.
It wasn't mechanized. Okay, yeah, that's what I was wondering.
It was almost director-actor kind of conversation, which was a neat way.
The other day, someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone was like, at the end of the session was like, aren't we going to do Roses and Thorns? And I was like, who are you? And I looked and I was like, oh, you've been playing with Rich. That's why you want to do this. Okay, fine.
I infect you all.
Tell me what was awful. No, it's good. It's a good habit.
Well, you start off with, Jason, what you do, you start off with Thorns so that you can get that out of the way and just ignore it. Then you end with Roses so you feel good.
End on the good stuff, yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about Uncharted Worlds?
No, looking forward to the next session coming up in a week.
Cool, awesome. Andrea, you're playing Edge of the Empire, right? That's a Star Wars game, right?
That is a Star Wars game, yes.
I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show. I'm sure listeners know what it is, but maybe just like a little overview.
Sure. Edge of the Empire is by Fantasy Flight Games. And I think most people know it as the game with the really funny dice.
Right,
Because they decided to like create this whole new dice rolling thing for it, where you have a bunch of different die types. And depending on how good you are at a skill, you roll a better die. So you might actually get a better result than just being okay at a skill. So you have just straight up successes, you have straight up failures, and then you have advantages and disadvantages, which are supposed to be narrative. You know, narratively, like you shoot the pipe, steam comes out, and somehow that gives your buddy a bonus.
Right, yeah.
And then you also have triumphs and failures, which are basically critical successes and failures.
Oh, cool.
It's a little bit crunchy. There is an app out there for actually dice rolling online, because we do play online. But my GM decided he was going to create his own app because the other one wasn't being updated.
Oh, okay. How is that? Is it?
It's actually really cool. It's really cool being
Okay.
able to say, hey, I want to do this thing. Like, he was debating whether or not we should have secret rolls. And, of course, we decided not to because it's more fun having the other characters paranoid about what other people are rolling about.
Nice, yeah.
So they've got quite a lengthy line now. They've brought out a lot of supplements, a lot of revisions, a lot of like Force-oriented ones, Smuggler-oriented ones.
Right.
It's Fantasy Flight Games, so I mean, they're going to milk it for all they're worth.
Right, yeah. I've played it one time, a long time ago. I think it was the very first one that Fantasy Flight did. Was that Edge of the Empire? The one with the smugglers and stuff? Yeah. And I remember, to me, like, it felt like it was in a weird space between, like, going, like, in a narrative direction, but still with some crunch. And I only played it the once, so I don't think I really got a good read on, like, what I thought about it. But I thought it was interesting. Yeah, it's interesting.
It is interesting. I did have to create my character using a generator, which I've never had to do before, and that was really weird for me. Yeah, but we're going on 44 episodes.
Damn!
And I still
Wow,
don't really...
okay.
Yeah,
Wow,
I still don't really know how the system works, so... I just asked the GM to explain how to roll a thing.
How many of the yellows and greens do I roll this time? Do I have any of the black
Exactly, that's
ones?
exactly what I do.
So
awesome.
Is character creation complicated? I mean, you said you used a generator. Is that why?
Yeah, it's not when you use the generator. You take any other system, right? And it's built off of, I have a skill of 3 in this thing, plus your attribute, and that equals some magic number. In this system, it takes your attribute, and that's like your base green die, which is just the basic die you have. And you add your ranks to it, and each rank you add in the skill, you get to upgrade it to a yellow die, which is slightly better. You can get more bang for your buck with the yellow die.
Yeah.
So it gets a little crunchy for me. I'm sure if I actually sat down and tried to do it by hand, I'd probably muddle my way through it. But the character generator is much prettier, and it's much easier.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
I've been interested in this game. I'm a Star Wars fan. It comes up, and I've sort of one thing I've heard about it that I wanted your input on is I've heard people say that like you'll roll the dice and the dice will tell you, you have a certain amount of successes, a certain amount of failures, so it comes out to be one or the other. But then there's the complications or the bonuses, whatever.
Yep.
And turning the fact that you have those into fiction, I've heard people say that can take some time. So there's like a pause at the table while everybody tries to interpret the dice.
Yeah, our GM is actually really fantastic at it. One of those situations where it sounds really cool in theory, but when you're rolling an extra advantage every single roll, and all you can really do is pass that on to a friend, it just sort of becomes taxing to go, oh, and now I have to find another reason for Rich to use this die.
Right.
Yeah.
How many Jedi do you have?
Well, we have one who escaped the Jedi Temple when the order was given to annihilate all the Jedi. He is our dark and evil Jedi. And we have a good Jedi who is actually supposed to be trained as a Sith, but escaped and is rebelling by being as good as humanly possible.
Wow, some Jedi flip mode going on. Great. So what's the ratio of Jedi to interesting characters?
Ouch.
Well, mine's the most interesting, clearly. Apparently my character, if you look at the straight morality rules, how they're written in the book, my character would actually out-evil the evil Jedi.
Nice. That's what I want. I want some HK-47 level evil in the Star Wars. I know you can pull that off, Andrea.
I could and I do.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about it, Andrea?
No, I don't think so. We're having a lot of fun with it. I honestly don't actually know much about Star Wars. Like, I'm the idiot in the corner that has to Google every monster he brings up.
Oh, I was going to ask you that. I'm glad you said that, because I was wondering how much of your enjoyment of the game depends on being a Star Wars fan.
For me, not much at all. Like, I like the movies, obviously, but our GM came at it from a sort of A-team angle. So, our characters were framed for a crime they didn't commit. But if you can find them, they'll help you. Except my character, who will extort you for money.
One of you won't go into hyperspace unless somebody doses his blue milk.
Yeah. Yes. It's pretty cute. So, I really enjoy it. It's a really great group. I like to say that I sneak role-playing into it because they're very trad gamers.
Got it, yeah.
But it's really fun, and there's that campy Star Wars-iness to it.
Cool. Yeah, I may have to look at that again, because I'm not a Star Wars guy either. I watch the movies, but that's about the extent of it. I don't know much about Star Wars beyond, the movies. And I like Star Wars, but I'm not like super pumped about Star Wars. And yet when I'm in the FLGS, I see those cool dice and all those big books, and I think, man, like, should I get into this? I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, well, I can hook you up with the die roller for Google Hangouts.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Chris
Yeah,
made.
that'd be great.
And you can play with that and look at all the pretty designs, and then you don't need to purchase the actual dice, because one of the big complaints about the game actually is the dice you buy. They give you like the little dice pack. It's not enough dice to actually do anything.
Oh, okay.
So you have to buy like 2 or 3 of them. Yeah, really.
Add-on sales, yeah.
Like, even if you pass them around the table?
Well, when you buy just the standard little package, I think you only get a couple of each dice. So if, like, my character is rolling, like, I think it's 5 yellow for charm checks.
Wow, that's really
what
lame.
happens after 44 sessions.
Yeah, you gotta get more. Yeah, there's no way.
Well, that's your fault for playing 44 game sessions. You're only supposed to play like 4 or 5, buy all the books, and then go on Wikipedia and edit the articles. That's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't even buy any of the books. I just used my roommate's book and then sort of flail ineffectively and ask people what I should buy next.
Awesome. Well, I got a chance to play Lovecraftesque again, and we've covered Lovecraftesque a fair amount on the show already. But so I'll just do a real quick overview. It is a story game by Becky Annison and Joshua Fox. In it, you as the group play a single protagonist who is working their way through a Lovecraftian mystery, collecting clues on your way to face the final horror. Really good game. I love it. What I wanted to talk about today was So when I played yesterday, it was the first chance I'd had to play the game with a pre-done scenario. And because normally the way I've been playing is you would create all the details of the protagonist, you would create all the details of the setting and all the locations, and you would also have to come up with all of your own clues, like kind of on the fly when it was your turn. And that works fine. I've always had good luck with it, but there can be a fair amount of like paralysis that happens at the table because Lovecraftesque, absent a scenario, it does kind of ask a little bit of the players, like it asks for just a little bit extra than a lot of other games do, or a little bit more rather. The scenario play was really cool because, so we actually used mine. That was just the way it worked out. We used mine that's in the book, and I was excited to get to try my scenario. So I was totally pumped about that, but I was more interested in just seeing how the scenario play worked. It was really neat because you just have like this, what's essentially just a list of like kind of inspirational elements and sample clues that you can use for your game. And I really enjoyed it. Getting the game started was much faster because we didn't have to do all that setup in the beginning because all that stuff is already done in the scenario. You already have your setting, you already have your locations, you have your protagonist. And then, the game was just generally snappier because there were already clues, like a list of clues that you could use. And we didn't use all of them. But we used about maybe, it was a mix of like a few clues from the list, and then a few clues that were inspired from the list, and then a few clues that were just completely original, but like clearly had the same like themes and motifs of the setting. And so the setting was kind of like an old Hollywood, like horror thing. And I was really happy with it. Using the little play set, the little scenarios, the little scenario things, it was really good for kind of maintaining some like sort of thematic discipline, was one thing I've discovered in playing other games of Lovecraftesque is you have like 4 or 5 people and you all have like kind of your own vision of like what things are like, and so you end up with a story that's enjoyable, but maybe it's a little incoherent or a little inconsistent in the details. But that wasn't the case yesterday. We told a story that was very much like in line with what the themes and motifs were laid out. And so I really liked it as a way of like sort of like disciplining the narrative a little bit. So I thought it was really good. Yeah, it was enjoyable. That's all I want to say about it. Just wanted to add that little wrinkle. As far as playing Lovecraftesque goes, I think I actually prefer it with scenario-based play as opposed to coming up with your own story. And the good news is the book has like a ton of them. There's so many scenarios in the back of the book. So, which I think is actually still in backer kit if people want to try to get their own copy.
Did they release a final PDF of that?
So we have backers. The Kickstarter backers have a preview PDF, which is still not the one I was working off anyway. Still had a few blank spaces, but it's more or less laid out and looks good. Looks pretty good. Okay. I think they're doing backer kit until all the way to September or so. In which case, anybody who's interested in it, who didn't get it on the Kickstarter, can go get their own copy of it.
Okay. So in Lovecraftesque, after every scene, you establish that there's a new clue, and then everybody tries to interpret the clues that have come up so far in their own theory of what's going on.
Yeah, you're constantly developing your own personal theory, and then one of those theories will become the eventual truth. Right. And you have to incorporate those clues into it.
Did you find that with the scenario or the playset, your theory like evolved less, or did you just find yourself honing in on it?
Yes, it actually did. And I actually didn't think about that till you just said it right now, but in fact it did. I made far fewer changes to my theory than I have in previous Lovecraftesque games. And I think that's because everyone was putting out clues that are just like sort of visually, thematically, like more in sync with each other. Yeah. And so, you have a lot like, you don't have as many like sort of crazy far-flung ideas to have to cope with. I don't know about the other players though.
Right.
My personal experience was that, I did a lot less editing, but it was really more refining. Like I think I got to like a really, really good final theory at the end, like it felt really like really true to the story we told.
And do you think that this would serve as a better intro to the game? Like first time you play Go Scenario?
I do. Yeah, I do. Because I've played Lovecraftesque with players who are, even some players who are pretty good at story games and more like, kind of like on the spot, sort of role playing. And there is a bit of, there's a bit of like slow down sometimes because you have to think of a clue, right? And you don't get much like, you don't get many prompts as to like what your scene should be about, right? So, I think using one of the scenarios would be a great way to go for a first game.
Yeah, cool.
And that's all I wanted to say about it. So, Steve, you got to play Fury of Dracula?
Yes, I got to play Fury of Dracula. Fury of Dracula is another Fantasy Flight game. And I think this is one of the ones where it was originally made by another company and Fantasy Flight bought up the rights and sort of polished it and re-released it years later. So brief overview. Fury of Dracula is a game in which a group of hunters are trying to hunt down Dracula. And the hunters include, Mina Harker and, Van Helsing. So Dracula's hunters try to find his trail because Dracula moves around on the map of Europe that you've got. Hunt him down and then stake him, kill him. And Dracula is trying to evade them for long enough to win, basically Dracula accumulates victory points, and he does this by evading the hunters for long enough, or by doing other things like creating new vampires. you have your win conditions, and it's a very interestingly asymmetrical game. One person plays Dracula, and 1 to 4 other people play the hunters. And the hunters take turns moving around. They move and search for helpful cards, that sort of thing. And then Dracula moves around in secret. There's this huge stack of cards covering all the locations on the map. Dracula puts down a new location, scoots over the old ones, and then puts an encounter card on top of the location. And the encounter cards it's all nicely thematic. You can lay down bats, and those bats chase people out of cities into other ones, that sort of thing. And if any old encounter card gets pushed off the board by new ones getting placed down, then they mature, which makes a terrible thing happen for the hunters. Almost always. Sometimes game-winningly bad things. And so the hunters are trying to find Dracula's trail and get rid of those cards so that doesn't happen. I haven't played as a hunter. I've only been Dracula. But as the hunter, it seems there's always some hesitation. Like, you want to go into this city and you got to go to Hamburg and get rid of the card Dracula laid down. It's not as complicated a hidden movement game as like Letters from Whitechapel. There aren't as many options for Dracula to evade pursuit. So once they've found your trail, I think it's easier for them to stay on it. And there's no resetting the way Letters does from night to night. It's all one thing. But you'll find that they'll narrow things down to, he could be at one of 2 or 3 places, basically. The outside the rules fun I have was it's just an excuse to do a stupid Dracula voice for, a couple hours.
Are you going to do that for us right now?
Okay. When the hunters look, they do a search action, right? Or a supply action. And the supply lets them draw 1 card and then draw another card from another stack. But if they do it at night, then I might, as Dracula, get a card. And so every time they're doing this, it's risky. They usually choose not to, but they were getting desperate. So, they start drawing off the deck. And when that happens, I'm just like, Drek gets a treat.
That was worth it. Thank you.
There we go. Yeah. So both sides have very interesting and very thematically interesting things going on. The hunters can accumulate like stakes and pistols and garlic and crucifixes. And Dracula can accumulate allies and stir up mobs and can leave vampires behind him and that sort of thing. The thematic ties to the mechanics are great. It's a really good looking game. The art's great. I like the hidden movement part. I think it's pretty well done, but I think I like it better in something like Letters from Whitechapel. There's a bit more to the cat and mouse game in that one, I think. This one sort of replaces that with more thematic stuff. My main issue with it is playtime. Box says 2 to 3 hours. We probably took twice that.
Oh wow!
And it was the first time for everyone. But yeah, I want to play again. I want to play from the hunter side, but we're using some timers of some sort because the playtime's just a killer.
Yeah, I've been burned by a lot of Fantasy Flight games on playtime, like where I have some people over. This is back in my board game days. I have a bunch of people over. I'm like, it says we'll be done in 2 hours, guys. Arkham Horror or whatever, right? And like 6 hours later, everyone's like, they're way past being done. It's like, oh man,
they are. The game isn't.
You can't even get Arkham Horror set up in 2 hours.
No, yeah, I know. So I learned that the hard way, like way, way long time ago for the first edition of the brand new Arkham Horror, So then I went through the very tedious, not fun at all process of setting it up before everyone got there. So, it was like lonely fun, but not fun. It was just lonely work. So, yeah.
And then you would have to guilt them into playing because they know you just spent 2 hours setting this up by yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, Arkham Horror, man.
I think we solved the mystery of why you stopped playing board games after 10 years, Jason.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, I mostly just stuck to the strategy games, the Euro games, which, usually play in about an hour and a half at most. But every now and then it would be one of those like, oh man, I need to scratch this itch, I'm in the store, look at this game. It looks fucking amazing,
big box of Ameritrash time.
Big giant box full of cool looking stuff. And you get it. And $80 later, you've played it twice and you're done. You're out. So.
Just want to nest in that I did play another game of Zaya. We played to 15, 3 times as many victory points. and it took 2.5 hours. It was awesome.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. Cool. Steve, is there anything else you want to say about Fury of Dracula?
No, that's it.
Rich, I gather you had a pretty good game of 1%er.
I did. This was an off-book game. It was part of the offshoot of Gauntlet City Limits. You know, with Gauntlet City Limits, I run 2 games a month, and we ran our 2 games in the previous month, but there was so much fun had in 1%er, even though we had a really good ending point with this big mystery where one character had gone off with 2 bricks of heroin worth, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars they'd stolen from the rival gang, and when the gang went to collect their friend, that one of the 2 of them was dead in the floor of this church that was their hideout, right? That was the ending of the session before, but I just hadn't had enough. So I gathered together people from both sessions of the game. We had a slightly larger gang, and we picked right back up as if it were just the next episode in the series. One of the player characters had been arrested. I thought, hey, this is the perfect opportunity to do the thing from Sons of Anarchy where you've got one guy on the inside and this whole rival gang is in there. And they they roll up on him and try to shank him, and there's a big fight there. And that was pretty awesome. We got to this point near the end of the session where they had found a bomb that was planted on one of the bikes and said, hey, let's pretend because they've got this reason to force us to give back their heroin to the rival gang. Let's stick this bomb into the heroin and have it blow up on them. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. That felt very Sons of Anarchy. It felt in the spirit of it. And I'm like, do I really want to set something up, some convoluted thing, to make it go to dice? Or do I just let it happen? You know, that was the weird point. It's like, there's a cool tension in setting up a die roll for a thing, but only if you're ready for it to fail and you have a backup plan. And I couldn't think of anything cooler than that moment being the capper for this, let's do it one more time type game, you know?
It sounds like it was a good call. I mean, as I got back into role-playing games a few years ago, that was one of those like skills I had to learn, you know, that I had kind of let go dull, which was when to cut a scene, you know, like when to say this scene is done, or when to say, you know what, this is good. Let's just let this ride, you know. That can be really hard sometimes. Yeah.
It is, because, you know, on one hand, you're playing a game, right? So you think, oh, well, we should engage the mechanics, especially about something as important, especially when you don't want to just decide what happens, right? Let's play to find out what happens. But I just got to the point where I said, you know, you can call me if I chickened out, that's fine. Call me on it, I don't care. But it felt like this is too cool. I can't top it with a failure. It would only kind of suck the wind out of the sails of 3 sessions when this isn't a campaign. So I let it ride. And so this thing, it happened, and we did a couple moments of them describing the after effects. And then I said, okay, and I did the whole, we're ending, the credits are rolling. That was like the last bit of the official movie. And then I said, you know, I wanted to frame those epilogues, and I said, okay, so we're doing the like credit sequence, little pockets of the screen are taken up with these moments. What do we see? And 3 sessions of biker gang members who are kind of snipe at each other, and they get in fights, and yes, they're on the same team technically, but they don't all seem to necessarily like each other. And they go through this unifying event of going against the rival gang, of one guy almost getting knifed, another person almost getting blown up. And all of the scenes that are happening in the epilogue are like bonding moments. It was crazy.
Oh, nice.
It was really unexpected. Like, this is so touching. we had the kid's sister gang member who was trying to like show that she was just as badass as her brother, and the 2 of them were sniping constantly. And one of the last bits is that the brother, who was a really good artist, he'd like written her biker name on the side of her really slick chopper, and all these little cool moments. It was unexpected, and it was earned, and it was just such a great capper. Like, I loved 1%. It's such a surprisingly good game.
I love how much you love it.
Yeah,
I love how much you love it because this game kind of came out of nowhere, right? Like,
yeah.
I had never heard of it. I was like, what is this game that Rich is about to play? What the hell does the title even mean? And, no, it's cool. It's good. Yeah. I want to play it now, man.
I'll totally ruin it for you.
You got it off a drive-thru, right?
Yeah, it's on drive-thru. It's dirt cheap. It's a dirt cheap little PDF. It's like 40, 50 pages. It's filled with curse words and expletives, but it's a neat little game. It's just fun. I love it. Now, if you're a fan of Sons of Anarchy, now, there are other people who played who had a great time and didn't really know the Sons of Anarchy, but if you can key into that Sons of Anarchy type vibe, there are moments where I'm like, I totally saw this in season 3.
Awesome.
I think I have my Sons of Anarchy down. I have to shake my head no while agreeing to do what you're saying and then call you bro.
Nailed it.
Wow. You had said before, Rich, when we talked about One Percenter, that like I would enjoy the visual biker man meat on display, right? And I went and I discovered Charlie Hunnam. I didn't know who that was before this.
Yeah.
That's a very good looking guy. I was like, man, he's really, really hot. So I may have to watch this show. That's a very shallow reason to watch a show, but
there's a lot of his butt in the show too.
You gotta have reasons. There are too many shows, so you gotta start like triaging somehow, right? And so, hot Charlie Hunnam will do. Is there anything else you want to say about it, Rich?
No, I'm good on One Percenter. Thanks for letting me geek out about it.
No, I love it. I want to play it too, man. I'm excited. Andrea, Kin?
Jin.
Kin? Tell us about Kin.
Jin is a game.
Jin.
Wow. I know.
Jin.
It's unexpected because Chinese.
Yeah, okay.
Jin is about Jin, which was a kind of a city-state. One of the city-states that kind of made up what is current modern China. And so this game takes place in about 240 BC when all the states are still warring with each other for dominance, and there's a lot of political machinations. If you actually go research this period in history, it's fascinating because you have so many schemes and so many betrayals, and just it's absolutely amazing. I'm such a geek about it. Also, kung fu movies. Nice. So, Jin it's a Cubicle 7 game. I admit I have a weakness for Cubicle 7. And you can play politicians, you can play kung fu people, you can play priests and alchemists. There's a huge wide variety of kung fu tropes that you can totally slot into this game and play. And one of the cool things about it is the theme, it's Chinese, it's kung fu, so they call their system the yin-yang system. So you have a black die and you have a white die, and you roll them together and you subtract them.
Right, cool. Nice.
Yeah. It's really cool, and then the system also really embraces kung fu movie moves. So you have they're called Daos, which is spelled with a T because Chinese. I really struggle with the actual Chinese because everything's Chinese themed. So if you don't speak Chinese, it's like Tao. I don't know what this word is. But so they have these Daos, and they allow you to walk on water, and you can, hit out somebody's sword and break it in half, or go my character Plum can do 5 or 6 moves before anyone else even gets to touch their dice.
That's such a good name. I had an Apocalypse World character named Plum once, and she was one of my favorite characters. I love the name Plum. It's so good.
Twinsies. And one of the best parts about it is the people at the table who are actually kung fu fans. And we've got some people who aren't really into kung fu, and then some people who love kung fu and crammed as much kung fu in pre-game as possible. And so a lot of us have really embraced the tropes, and those who don't really know much about kung fu they've kind of slotted themselves in and just taken it and run with it. And it's super cheesy and it's super over the top and it is fantastic.
That's awesome. That's good. I love the tropes. I always say embrace the tropes. I say that all the time in gaming because to my mind, I've said this 100 times, so podcast listeners they know what's about to come out of my mouth, but I think tropes are awesome because they are our common sort of pop cultural language, and it makes role playing easier. So give me the Scottish dwarves. Give me the elves who love trees. Right, that's what I want.
And there's a difference between being exposed to a trope or cliche or whatever in a movie or a book or something, and being this crappy thing I've seen. There's a difference between that and participating in it. And suddenly,
right, yeah, exactly.
Oh, I've seen this. Yeah, I've seen this before. It turns into, I'm doing this. And it's, it works really well. Yeah.
I have to ask Andrea, when you say that you dove in and did a lot of research on Kung Fu and Wuxia, did you basically just watch a few YouTube videos? Is that what you did? Was that your deep research?
We went out and we found
Thank you, Rich.
like the historic Kung Fu movies. Like the one we just recently watched is Three Kingdoms, and it's fantastic. And it's three particular kingdoms who are fighting over, domination of this part of the world. And I'm not sure how historically, legendarily accurate it is. I think it's supposed to draw from some legendary elements, but, it's basically just, this was the world that these people lived in. I mean, with Kung Fu action.
Nice.
Clearly.
Nice.
Cool. Awesome.
Andrea, do you have somebody at the table that, or in the game, that does speak Chinese to scowl at you whenever you try to pronounce something?
He researched it, and I'm pretty sure he would be okay if we totally just mauled all of these words. But I was a language major, so I feel really bad. So I'm the one at the table saying, say that again. Say that again. Say that again. So I'll hold up whole scenes with pronunciation.
So, how is the game? It sounds like you're having fun with it, but just mechanically or whatever. Does it hold up? Is it good?
Oh, yeah. I absolutely love it. I know I've talked to a couple other people who have looked at it, and they think it's a little too crunchy and a little too unmanageable. And I know our GM feels like he has to know what everybody's moves do. As a GM, I personally don't care. I'm like, if you're going to cheat, you're going to cheat, and I don't really care. But
Nice.
he feels like he has to know what everyone's moves do. And because there's 20 different Dao paths, he's just totally overwhelmed. I think he's kind of buried himself in a little pit.
Wow.
But I really, really enjoy the game. And it feels like a Kung Fu game when you have a character go up and he's like, well, I'm going to punch this tree and it's going to explode and hit this troll with 1,000 splinters.
Nice. I love it. That's awesome. That sounds pretty cool. Neat. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
Chinese is hard. If I didn't get that point across.
We've established that just now, so yeah, no worries. That message got through. My butchery of the name of the game for a start. Cool, awesome. Steve, I am jealous because you have gotten to play Pandemic Legacy and I still have not. How is it?
You should be jealous. So Pandemic Legacy is pandemic that everybody knows by now, I'm sure. Diseases ravaging the world. You gotta, cooperative, you gotta work with your teammates to cure them. And Legacy combines that with, permanent things that you do to your board and your character sheets and your cards and whatnot. And you'll open boxes. The game has hidden stuff that you'll draw out and, ooh, look, new pieces, right? It's all very permanent. I ripped something up last night and it felt wrong and I liked it. So the game plays out, over a year. You do things month to month. And I've only played the first month. We've only played January. So this is very preliminary. There's very, early feelings. And so I don't want to go into spoilers. So to a certain extent, this is going to sound like everything you've probably heard about Pandemic Legacy. Except I'm going to give right.
Just
I don't want
vague
to say
endorsements.
Much.
That's all
right.
it is, yeah.
So I do, however, want to give you a spoiler-free first-person perspective of what we played. First, we played a refresher course game because my friends hadn't played in a year or so, and so we just played a base game. The game only comes with 5 epidemics, so we couldn't go harder than that, but 5 epidemic cards. We eradicated one disease.
That's still pretty hard, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We eradicated one disease, cured the other 3, doing great, looking good. We got this. Move into actual Pandemic Legacy rules. First month, January. We eradicate one disease, cure another, looking good. We got this. And then the Legacy bit kicks in, pretty hardcore. And suddenly I'm, it's all, I tear up what? We do what now? How many outbreaks? And then just Mexico City's on fire and it's, don't worry, it's only forever. Because welcome to Legacy. When there are outbreaks in a city, it affects that city from then on in every other game you play. And if a city outbreaks when one of your characters is in it, your character gets what's called a scar. A scar is a permanent thing that now hinders your character in a specific way. If you get 3 scars, that character is gone forever. You rip the card up. That didn't quite happen yet, but it came close. So our first game was a horrible disaster. If you screw up a month, you can try it again though, just once. And our second game, many bad things happened, but we pulled out a narrow victory. And then after we finished that, we knew we weren't going to play again for the night. So we were pulling stuff out, which is just set up for February, right? And as we're doing that, I've never felt such a roller coaster wave of emotions playing a board game. Cause it's like,
wow.
You're opening presents. It's like Christmas. Look at these amazing things. Oh crap. This present was from Krampus. Look at this terrible thing. And you're permanently changing the rules and you're permanently, it's just, I've only played 1 month. I can't in 1/12 of the game realistically call it the best game I've ever played, but I think it's probably going to end up, resting in that category.
Wow. Yeah. Dan really loved it. And I mean, he really loved it. He was very effusive about how much he enjoyed it. And Dan is not inclined to get caught up in hype. He's just not that kind of guy. And that made me think, this is probably a really good game. So
I like that the stakes are huge. It puts a really, I thought, enjoyable pressure on you, on the players, because things really matter. To the point where normally in Pandemic, when a city is at risk of outbreak and you're about to have to draw cards that might, cause an outbreak and just make things worse all over the place, you'll, if possible, go to that city, remove a cube. But now that basically if you're caught in a city when it outbreaks, you take a scar and your character might be lost forever. You're hesitant to go into trouble areas. South America's real bad, you guys. It might have to stay that way. Sorry, South America. We can't die. This character's too good. If your character dies, or the game calls it lost, then what happens is you draw a civilian card, which basically you discard your hand, draw a civilian card. And that's your character from now on, or at least for the rest of this game. And the civilian is, you can play normally, you can do normal actions, you still have the normal number of actions, but you don't have the special things that your characters can do.
Yeah.
And that's pretty huge. You really get kicked in the pants if you lose a character. I really like that the game has, I've heard it referred to as rubber banding mechanics when it's a competitive game. When it's cooperative, I don't know if you'd call it that, but it adjusts the difficulty based on how well you're doing. So if, the number of special cards you get in the player deck gets adjusted after every win or loss. You win, it goes down. You lose, it goes up. On our outline, I have issues and I can't really think of any. I'm sorry. That's not accurate. My friend Mark was so worried about doing well in the game that he had a dream last night about doing terribly in Pandemic Legacy and failing us and failing the world. That's about as close as I can get to a negative. Otherwise, it's
emotional bleed. Oh man,
right. Otherwise, it's just amazing. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good.
Cool. Yeah, I can't wait to try it. I just, man, I have to get in a place where I'm playing games face to face with people again. Cool. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's so good.
I got a chance to play a play test of a game that was originally one of the submissions for the 200-word RPG challenge. It was a submission by Alan Dotson. Side note, Alan is doing some of the artwork for the first issue of Codex. So just a little
cool
plug there for Codex, which I keep plugging and no one's seeing it. So Paranormal Rescue Squad is the name of the game. Paranormal Rescue Squad, it's still in playtest. It's still pretty early, but there's a really good core there. We had a great time with it. The idea is you play a team of crack, AR-15 equipped like extraction soldiers or whatever, you know, and you're going into a place, where paranormal stuff is happening and you're doing a mission, right? Pretty straightforward. The gameplay is based off of these lists. So on my turn, I can choose to investigate a thing. And if I choose to investigate a thing, then there's a list of like things I could discover. And so I choose what that is. And then, the prompt, like it could be, you discover the true objective, or you discover some, you know, a piece of equipment, or you discover a location of something or something like that. Right. And, I describe what I find, and then I cross something off the list. Not necessarily the thing I chose, just something from the list. Okay. And then, the other players provide the danger. So there's a list of dangers. So the dangers might be the dead, a small creature, a large creature, your commanders, us, like it could be like one of us is a danger. And they pick a thing off the list. They describe what the danger is. And then you have a list of costs. And so you have to like, cross off one of the costs, like what you lose in order to overcome the danger. Okay. And, gameplay goes like that, with just these lists providing like your sort of like prompts for your scene, right? And things are getting crossed off. And when you reach a certain point, like when stuff is all crossed off, then the game is over. So even in this early stage, there are a few things that I really liked. The list-based play, I was a little skeptical at first because it, I don't know, it just seemed like kind of, like, it seemed a little parochial or something, you know, like it just seemed like really simple. And I was like, well, how's this going to lead to a good story, right? But I actually quite liked it, because as you are making decisions about what to use from the list, you're also making a decision about what to cross off from the list, right? So let's say, for example, I have the following dangers. I've got the dead, a huge creature, or our commanders. That's what's left. So I choose the dead, which means we're going to be attacked by zombies or something. And so I narrate a scene showing, you know, the zombies. And then I have to make a decision about what I'm crossing off. Well, if I cross off the dead, that means it's the last time we're going to have to cope with zombies. But if I cross off, our commanders, I'm foreclosing the possibility of, you know, this being like a betrayal from our commanders, right? Our commanders are going to betray us. And so all these lists function in that way. Like, when you make your decision of like what to cross off from the list, you're making like active decisions about what kind of story you're going to tell. And, I found that very interesting. It was an interesting sort of like, constraint on play, because you had to really think about like, well, if I cross this thing off, I'm going to like, the story is going to be more like X instead of Y. And, I found that very interesting. I thought it was really neat, like kind of little decision making process. The prompts themselves are just enough to make a good scene. This is something you see in a lot of games, like, the one I played most recently is Fall of Magic. It just has like a very, very simple, like small short phrase story prompt. And, but it's enough to like kind of get your scene going. And this is very similar to that. I like that style of play. And the game does not overstay its welcome. We told a complete, tight story in about 2 hours. And it wasn't like we stopped at 2 hours and we still had a bunch of loose threads. Like it wasn't that. Like the story was done. Like it was a complete story arc, and I was really happy about that. A few things that he's going to have to work on a little bit still. We talked about this. There might be some sort of like pacing issues involved, particularly when you have like different numbers of players. It became apparent that like if you had too many players, the game would probably be over really fast. So he's going to have to kind of figure out the pacing and balancing stuff to make sure it scales well, with any number. And then we also talked about the possibility of introducing some sort of zombie cinema style narrative pacing to it. So, making certain options available at different times in the story in order to, better tell in order to better do like a narrative arc that makes sense, like you might see in a movie or a book or something. So for example,
that's cool.
You know, so like as it is, like one of the things you can learn is you can learn the backstory about one of the other team members, right? But if you have that one hanging around towards the end of the game, it would be kind of weird to like suddenly learn the backstory of a character, you know, who's been with you the whole game session. So we talked about maybe like, you know, maybe you have like the more like backstory type story prompts like early, and then the more like twist ending type story prompts like towards the end. And so he thought that was a good idea. So he's going to work on some of that stuff. All in all though, really solid. I mean, it was fun. I had a good time with it. I can't wait to see how it develops.
So the version you play tested, is that expanded from the entry that was in the 200 words?
Yeah, he added about 200 more words. So that's up to about 400 words now. Yeah. Yeah, he's got a little game, got quite a bit of little game packed into this very, very short text. So
400 words, that's vast and starlit territory right there.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
You could not fit that on a small pamphlet. That's impressive. I would not have expected. I did not realize it was that short. That's pretty cool.
I think a lot of people who participate in that contest really are into the creative constraint of the contest. Like, I'm going to make a cogent, comprehensible game in 200 words, right? I looked at some of last year's entries, and you would think that like coming up with something that's only 200 words would be easy. I don't think that's true. I think the opposite is true. Yeah, it's probably very, very hard to make something playable that you can only express the rules in 200 words, right? So,
I played a few 200 word RPGs from last year's entries when I wanted to do the 10 RPGs in one day, and there were a few of those that were really surprisingly fun. And because it is so constrained, several of the games explored things I just hadn't seen in any other RPG. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I think one of the things I've noticed about that contest is, the stakes are pretty low, right? So I think people like take a chance on like what sorts of game they're going to do, what kind of stories they're going to tell with it. So, which is one nice feature of it.
And I like, it's 200 words, so it's not going to kill me to read through several entries to try to find them.
Exactly.
Like for Game Chef, it's a commitment. There's a lot of stuff there, but 200 words, I can play with that. I can look around with it.
Yeah. There's one from last year where there's a bear you're at a rave, and a bear is trying to eat everybody, and you're the DJ, and as long as you're doing your sweet DJ stuff, the bear will dance and not eat people. But occasionally, like, the track switches to a track the bear doesn't like. And so you have to figure out which track the bear likes to dance to. And I don't know. I don't remember what it's called, but,
I think it's just like the bear in the rave, or the bear in the raver.
It's like Rave Bear or Raver Bear or something like the bear and the DJ, something like that. So, 200 word RPG challenge. So anyway, it was a cool game. I don't have much else to say about it. It's playtest. But it sounds like he's really committed to like, to kind of expanding it out and making it a nice, done thing. So I'll be curious to see how it goes.
What's it called for people who like want to stock this game?
Oh yeah, it's called Paranormal Rescue Squad. And I think, I'm not sure where he's at in terms of like sharing the current playtest rules, but if he's cool with it, I'll put a link in the show notes so people can go find it. All right. Let's go to Giving Me Life. It's Giving Me Life. Rich, what's giving you life?
Okay, I'm sorry, but it's Pokemon Go.
I'm okay with it.
Go
That's
ahead,
fine.
skip ahead.
That's
Just
fine.
if you check the time marks and go ahead and skip ahead. Here's why Pokemon Go is giving me life, guys. So my son and I, he plays a lot of first-person shooters, and I can't really watch it because I get a little motion sickness because the guy has a look sensitivity up to like 8 or 9, and he's going around like some kind of like hamster on crack. And I watch it for a few minutes, and I just oh god. And so this is a game that we can play together. Pokemon Go, it's a augmented reality game where you have to go outside. You literally have to go outside, which is amazing. So we're going on walks, Pokemon Go walks. We get out. We have to walk around the neighborhood. We have to walk to like parks and the like. Saturday night we're out and it starts getting dark and we're just standing by this pond because there was a lure and he was picking up some Pokemon, and there was like 6 people in cars all sitting on their phones also playing Pokemon Go. The 2 of us had walked there, but I don't know. It was cute. He had his first gym fight where he took some of his prize Pokemon. He went up against this team of Pokemon. He got his butt handed to him. It was a bit of sadness. And then we talked about it and we started to leave. And these 2 college kids like drove up and they said, "Oh, the lure's gone. And, how did you guys do at the gym?" And so he says, "So what team are you?" And my son says, "I'm Team Red." He goes, "All right, Team Red. Yeah, we'll take that gym down." And then they drive off.
Nice,
and it just made his day.
You know it did. Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of people on Google Plus who are posting up pictures of whatever Pokemons, the character points and all that other blah, blah, and that's cool. That's awesome that that's their excitement. But me just going on long walks with my kid and us chatting about stuff while he's holding up my phone and kind of scanning around for things and then excitedly talking about getting some little Rattata and stuff like that, that's giving me super life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I was just slipping there real quick. So my partner, Rich, he's not really into like anything like video games or geek stuff or nerd stuff. He's just not into it. He's really like actively not into stuff like that. And he likes classic film from the 1940s. That's the kind of guy Rich is. But I think he like shows me like 5 Pokemon Go stories on the internet a day at this point. And like, and I'm like, you want to go play Pokemon Go, don't you? He's like, no, I just think it's really ridiculous. I'm like, oh yeah, you think it's really ridiculous. That's why you talk about it constantly, but okay. So I have a feeling that we're going to be doing those walks too, Rich.
It's cute. It's neat to stand and you look, and you see people staring at their phones and they're no longer rude. They're playing the same game you are.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And I bet your son got a thrill.
Yeah, if you're doing it, it's not rude.
Exactly. Whenever older people validate something that kids do, like kids love that, right? That's the thing that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Andrea, what's giving you life?
I have been rewatching Siberia for the 3rd time. P.S. It's been 802 days as of the day we are recording this since the last episode aired. I'm not keeping track. I found it on Twitter, just so we're clear.
What is Siberia?
I don't even know what it is. What is Siberia?
Siberia was a TV series run on NBC for a season.
One season. That's it.
One season. Okay. But if somebody, like if you guys have enough money and maybe a TV company in your pocket.
We'll crowdfund it. It's all right.
Yeah. They totally want to do a 2nd season. If they can't get it together, they're going to do a graphic novel, which at this point I'm also cool with. But Siberia is like Survivor gone wrong.
I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a group of reality show contestants dropped in the Siberian wilderness and basically told, if you survive, you'll get $500,000. Go. Except then they encounter like this horrible like monster and these really unfriendly like people who live nearby that want them out because they think they're going to stir up the monster, and then people start dying. Their entire production crew disappears and there's just like this bloody trail left behind.
Oh, nice.
And then all of a sudden there's like a meteor shower and things turn, like the sky turns green and it starts snowing in the middle of summer and they are screwed. And it's all shot from this reality show standpoint where I was watching it live and I'm like, is this a reality show or is this fiction? And they really walk that line. At one point, they actually turn to the cameramen when everything goes sideways and they say, keep filming. No matter what happens, keep filming because somebody needs to know what happened here. It is so good.
Well, so are you saying when you first watched it, you didn't realize it was fiction?
No, I don't do reality TV usually.
Yeah, it was same here actually.
Yeah, I caught like a tail end of an episode when something like really terrible had happened, and I was like, "Oh my god, what just happened?" Right. So I had to go like hunt down the previous 3 episodes, and then I just was hooked, and remain hooked. And I'm watching it for the 3rd time to actually. I'm creating a game around it for some friends.
Nice. Oh, cool! What kind of game?
Really fun.
Nice
RPG video game.
Oh yeah, it's totally an RPG.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to
You
run
heard it here first, Gauntlet
see.
Listeners, so preview. We like sneak peeks. It's good.
Oh, yes. So I'll let you guys know how it goes. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I don't think they know what they've signed up for yet, which is the best part.
Nice. Did you tell them it was a Deadlands game?
Pretty close.
Yeah, awesome.
Pretty close. But I will say, like, I've put Nathan Fillion as the host because I know when his helicopter goes down, it's going to hurt people deep inside.
Nice. That would work on me.
Yes.
Steve, what's giving you life?
What's giving me life is mooching. I've recently moved in with friends who I've never, or at least not recently, not in a long time, been current with current console generations, like Xbox and PlayStation, whatever. So I have access to Xbox One for the first time, and I'm basically using it to play old games I've never played, and I'm just going around in Just Cause 2 and, attaching a helicopter to a car and giggling. I'm just doing that and watching Hulu and catching up on TV shows I've missed because I'm lame and behind the times. That's it. I'm just, hooray for roommates that have much better things than I do.
We all go through a phase like that in our lives at some point, right?
Right.
Where your roommate has way better stuff, so you enjoy.
I
the
got all the
fruits
board
of
games.
their,
It's cool.
Oh, there you go. See, it's good. Awesome. Mine's a video game thing too. I've been a longtime fan and subscriber to this game called Pinball Arcade. It was, I don't remember where it was originally released, but I had it on iPad originally, and I now play it on PS4. I've played it for years. I really enjoy it. Basically, they do like very, very like accurate video reproductions of actual pinball machines from back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s.
Oh, cool. And
yeah. So like they redo all the noises, all the like, the lights and all that stuff. Like they do a really, really great replica video game reproduction of each table. I'm a big fan of pinball as well. Little known fact, when I was a kid in the early 90s, I participated in a pinball tournament, and it was amazing.
Were you a pinball wizard?
I was not quite a wizard, but I have always loved pinball. In fact, Jason Morningstar went to go play pinball or something recently he posted about it on G+, and I was like, oh man, I want to go play pinball with Jason Morningstar. That'd be amazing. So I had a little like double geek out moment because it was Jason Morningstar plus pinball. I was like, so Pinball Arcade's great. And every now and then I get back into it and I play it ferociously. And and I'm in one of those spots right now where I'm just like, I just can't wait to like go play it. And, it's good. Pinball Arcade gives me a lot of life.
Awesome.
All right. That's our show. Listeners, if you would like to get in touch with us, I recommend going to our website, gauntlet-rpg.com. On our website, you will find links to our other podcasts, as well as our G Plus community, which is awesome. So please go join our G Plus community. We have several meetups where we organize games, so go check those out. And we're on Twitter at GauntletRPG. Andrea, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great having you. Rich, Steve, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
And listeners, thanks for listening. Have a good one. Got to play Fury of Dracula. Sorry. That's really hard to say fast.
You want to play some Fury of Dracula? Yeah. Come on over.
Okay. Yeah.
As long as it's not Furry of Dracula, I'm okay.
I like Furry of Dracula. That would be pretty good. Cool. Steve, is there anything else you want to say about Fury of Dracula? Fury of Dracula.
No, that's it.
God, that's hard to say fast. Okay.
No, that's all.
Awesome.